Hello, everyone, and may the 4th be with you. It's Star Wars Day. We're celebrating Star Wars today by doing a little review for Bad Batch, which just dropped its premiere episode on Disney Plus today. The episode was called Aftermath. I remembered it this time because I put it in the thumbnail today. But yeah, my name's Joe Fricke. I'm the host, one of the hosts of the movie Changeup podcast, and me and Tristan have been reviewing we did Falcon and Winter Soldier. Now that that's over, we need a new show to review, and we're going to do Bad Batch. And I think we're going to double up on Bad Batch and Loki when Loki starts coming out. I think June 11th is that. So, Tristan, what were your kind of expectations coming into Bad Batch?
I wasn't sure coming in because the Bad Batch episode of the final season of Clone Wars, where they kind of like backdoor piloted the show, wasn't my favorite episode, and I don't think the action of Clone Wars is my favorite part of the show either. So I wasn't quite sure. This seemed like it was all the stuff about Clone Wars that I wasn't super into, all put into one show. But then when I saw the premiere, I liked it a lot. I was kind of blown away by a lot of parts of it, and I'm a lot more invested than I thought I was going to be. And I'm curious going forward how much I'm going to be invested into it. But for now, for one episode, I'm very into it, and I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, I was in a similar boat to you. I think of the final season of Clone Wars, the Bad Batch arc was probably my least favorite, but I also think it was partially because we didn't have any real connection to those characters, or maybe I don't know if this is just going to be a one season thing or a multi season thing, but whenever Bad Batch is over, maybe I go back and I rewatch that initial arc and I feel differently about it. But yeah, I wasn't really my favorite arc, and so I just had no like hype for this show at all. It wasn't like I was like not looking forward to it, but it wasn't like when Mandalorian season 2 came out, where I was just like sitting and like, okay, like 1 week until
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorian, 3 days until Mandalorian, tomorrow's Mandalorian, where it's like, oh, okay, I guess Bad Batch comes out tomorrow, I'll watch it. I got up before work to watch it, and yeah, I really liked it. I had some things I didn't like about it, but there were some things. What was your favorite part of the episode?
I just really loved the dynamic between the characters. I thought
Yeah.
they really sold me on that team dynamic and all their individual personalities like blending together into this one team. I think that was something they had to really sell me on was all these individual clones being unique individual characters and not having it feel like forced. Like why are these random clones having personalities and the other ones aren't? And they sold that to me very well. So I'm excited to see more from the team there.
Yeah, I really like that too. I really like the team aspect, especially with Echo and kind of coming in and being part of the team. I feel like even if you didn't see the initial arc, you kind of felt that he was a newer member of the team. But I also like, and if I didn't say already, this is a full spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the episode and you want to come back and check us out after you finish the episode, but even with, I think it's not Tech, the sniper. I can't remember the sniper's name that
I
turns
think
on
it's Crosshair.
or yeah, crosshair, whatever. Like you could tell even when he's kind of being a dick in the beginning after Order 66 that this isn't how he normally acts, and it just felt like the writing and everything was great. And I like how they have post Order 66, all of the clones kind of start to lose their personality. Like you even see there's the scene where they're all in the bright white clone trooper armor. They're not in kind of their
Mm-hmm.
individualized armor anymore. And I think as the series goes on, most of them won't go by their nicknames anymore. They'll go by their serial designation. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing of how Order 66 was kind of like a hard drive reset for the clones, except the Bad Batch didn't really have, like, because of the augmentations in themselves, that they didn't really have the Order 66 experience except for Crosshairs. But one of the things I wanted to ask you was, as far as I remember, it seemed that what made them different was intentional, like they were designed to be the way that they are. But it almost felt presented in this show that it was like all of their abilities were on accident, like they were like botched, and but they still got powers. And I thought originally that they were like designed to be how they were. So I wanted your thoughts on that. Did you interpret it different, or?
Yeah, I interpreted the same as you. I thought originally they were done that way intentionally, but maybe not. I don't know. I think that was how I read it at first, but now I'm thinking back and I think of stuff like 99, that kind of
Yeah,
defective older clone, and I wonder if we're supposed to see them in the same light as 99. Like they're not that level of defective, but they are defective in a way that they call defective, like they have the personality they're not supposed to have. They have the kind of outbursting uniqueness they're not supposed to have. So I wonder if that will be explored more because I'm sure they're going to get more into just like how the clones decay over time and what
Yeah,
happens to them as the Empire transitions away from clones into stormtroopers. And one of the standout scenes for that for me was when the Palpatine he's addressing them and he gives that speech he gives towards the end of Revenge of the Sith, and now we're seeing it from the perspective of the clones, where he's basically saying like, "Oh, it's a galactic empire now. I'm the new emperor," and you see all the clones kind of cheering in that crowd.
yeah,
And it was like, wow, that's something the clones in the Clone Wars would never do because they were
yeah,
more or less on the side of the good guys and more or less morally righteous kind of characters. And seeing them all cheer for the bad guys, especially in their pale, plain white uniforms, is really cool. And I think it's going to be fun to see that transition. Like I said, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be into these next few episodes, but I'm into the idea of watching the Empire rise up in the ashes of the Republic and seeing like what was that like from the perspective of these clones. What was that
yeah.
like from like an everyman sort of POV?
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be kind of what this show, I don't want to say focuses on, but I feel like we're going to get kind of the rise of the Empire and the formation of the Empire and what the beginning days of the Empire looked like through the eyes of the Bad Batch.
And I like that a lot. I think we'll even see the clones transform around them. Like you said, they're all in the pale white uniforms. I think they're
Yeah,
going to slowly but surely develop into the stormtrooper uniforms over time. So we'll see
yeah,
like the way that becomes what it is.
yeah, for sure. What, is there anything else you wanted to touch on, or?
Yeah, I don't want to go through this too quick without mentioning the Kanan cameo at the
Oh
beginning of
yeah,
the episode.
yeah, I thought that was great. Some people are mad because it doesn't quite line up. I guess there was a Kanan comic that explained like his experience through Order 66. I didn't read the comic, so it didn't bother me. I didn't notice it, but I guess also his like how that story's delivered in the comic is it's his retelling of it. So I could kind of see like that's where that's how any discrepancy could be explained away. Is this is a memory of when he was 10 or 11 years old, and now he's 20 plus, and then it was a very traumatic experience. So I can understand why he maybe remember it a little differently than how it went down. But I know from what I read, a lot of the broad strokes were the same.
Yeah, I read the comic way back when it came out, so I don't remember it exactly, but I do think it hit a lot of the same beats. As I was watching it, I was thinking like I should go back and read that issue and see if this lines up. But some of the lines line up, some of the shots line up, so like the essence is there. It's just not exactly the same
Yeah,
as what it was in the comic, so I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah. But I thought it was a great moment. I like seeing him again. The Freddie Prince Jr. voice kind of threw me off a little bit because it's 10, 11-year-old kid with a 40-year-old man's voice coming out of it. But
Very weird, but I was happy to see him again. I
yeah,
was cool to hear Freddie Prinze Jr. play him
yeah,
again. It made
yeah,
me realize I kind of miss Rebels and I miss those characters, and it'd
yeah,
be nice to just see him for one scene again, which is kind
yeah.
of cool.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say too is I really like the animation, like style and the look and everything of it. It's definitely on par with the final season of the Clone Wars. I mean, I knew from the trailers it wouldn't be, but I was hoping it wouldn't be a step down, like how Rebels is kind of a step down from the Clone Wars animation.
Yeah, this is some of the best animation I've seen in a Star Wars show. I think it might even be a step above the final season of Clone Wars for me. I think the
Yeah,
detail work is so good, like especially on like the droid armory, like you could see like the rust and the aging and that kind of
yeah,
stuff on there, and you could
yeah,
see on the tanks, you can see like the kind of rusting and that kind of stuff in the tanks. So you can definitely tell like the
yeah,
detail work has gotten so much better. It doesn't look like you mentioned in the text earlier, a PS2 cutscene.
yeah.
I
Like,
think the early Clone Wars tend to look like PS2 cutscenes, and this definitely does not look like that. This is definitely a PS4 cutscene we got right
yeah,
here.
yeah. This is some 4K cutscene right here.
Yeah, they got us on our 4K 60 FPS cutscenes right here.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the look of it. Trying to think before we go on. Do you want to do what we did kind of with Falcon and Winter Soldier and go kind of over the overall plot, or
Yeah, I did take notes on it basically in plot order, so I have like a
all right,
decent act breakdown of like the different events, so we can cover that
all
in
right,
order if you had nothing else to cover up front.
all right, yeah. And then I think at the end we'll do what we did with Falcon and Winter Soldier and kind of end with some predictions because I have one that's not really a prediction and more of like a confirmation, and then I have another big prediction that I'm
Yeah,
surprised
curious.
more people aren't talking about online. I'll say that.
I have a couple predictions too to get to at the end, one that I think will make you pretty happy, so I want to get your
I
reaction to
think we're
that one.
online with the same. I think we're on par with my boy.
Yeah, we're on. We talked about it already, but anything last you want to mention about this opening sequence where the Bad Batch is on? I believe it's, I don't remember the name of the planet now, but they're where Caleb Dune is at, and they're doing this conflict with Caleb. Yeah, Joe's teasing my theory for the rest of the show. If you want to see it on live on twitch.tv/movie changeup.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
But yeah, this opening sequence is cool. We get a glimpse of Caleb's kind of trauma from Order 66, and we get to see why he hates clones so much. But we're seeing it from the clone POV, and they're just as confused as he is.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that they're like kind of lost literally in the woods. They're just like, what's going on? This they declare Order 66, and I don't know what that even is, but Crosshair seems to kind of be reacting to it weirdly, and
Yeah.
we're trying to put together the mystery along with the droids. Or along with the clones. It'd be fun to kind of watch this because it goes hand in hand with Revenge of the Sith, with the final season of Clone Wars, with even the Kanan comic. Like all, there's a lot of stuff that
And
happens like in this one moment of
and
Star Wars
Jedi
history,
Fallen
and it's
Order.
great.
If you played Jedi Fallen Order, that's probably my favorite Order 66 moment is when that happens in Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah, that's a great one in Jedi Fallen Order. I think Order 66 is such a fascinating like moment in Star Wars history because it's just one cool like montage in the movie,
Yeah.
but these books and the shows and everything else have really made it into like a really huge event. And I think this is yet another one of those instances. All you got to hear is you don't even have to hear the line. You just have to know like generally what's going on. They mentioned like, oh, Anakin and Obi-Wan are just captured Grievous, something like that, and you
Yeah.
realize like, oh, in the background this is about to happen, and you're getting ready
Yeah.
and getting ready.
Yeah. As soon as they said, "Oh, Obi-Wan is captured or killed General Grievous," then you're like, "Oh, okay, I know what's
That's
about to
right.
go down here."
Mm-hmm. But yeah, anything else you want to mention on that first? We talked a bit about it on Kanan's side, but and not much, just so much on the clone side.
No, I mean, I liked everything, especially in that opening thing. You kind of get to see, I think his name's Tracker, is the kind of the Rambo looking guy. We get to see him and Crosshair's relationship, and their little kind of hero villain dynamic start to begin, where Kanan jumps across the ledge, and then you can see that doubt when Crosshair looks down at the ravine after he says, "Oh, I zapped him," as he jumped
Mm-hmm.
across and he fell and he looked down, and then later you have the line of, "Oh, usually people when they see someone fall, they look down, they don't look across," and I think that was kind of a nice little touch for the beginning of their little hero villain dynamic.
Yeah, I think their dynamic is interesting too because I at first I was like, oh, this is gonna go on for like the whole show. They're gonna be butting heads for this whole entire like first season, and then by the end of the first episode, Crosshair is already like on the other side of
Yeah,
the battle here. So I'm excited to see him kind of hunting them down. We'll get to him at the end, but I think that's a cool arc between Crossbones and I think Hunter is the
yeah,
main guy's
yeah.
name.
Hunter. Yeah,
So from there, we go from that really cool opening scene to back to Kamino, the classic Attack of the Clones
oh,
location, and one we saw a lot in the Clone Wars. But it's different now. It's a lot darker. It's a lot literal colder. Like the clones are
yeah,
distant. No one's. It's not that family hanging out kind of vibe. And Tarkin has arrived, and he's kind of doing a inspection of the clones and deciding whether or not he wants to continue with the clone army or switch to recruits. And it's up, of course, from the Star Wars lore that he does switch to recruits and ends up cutting the clone army for one reason or another. So
oh.
I'm curious on your thoughts of Tarkin's kind of role in this show overall, and especially in the first episode.
Yeah, I like it. One of the things I was curious about for you, because I know one of your problems in Star Wars overall is too many like old characters returning and maybe not enough new. So I was more curious what your thoughts were on it being Tarkin and when it could be just like a random Imperial guy coming in.
I like Tarkin. For me, I like the connecting tissues when it could be any random person, but they're like, oh, we have a person, so let's use them. I don't like it so much when they're like, okay, let's move the whole plot around so that we can have Luke Skywalker show up in the episode, and
Yeah,
let's something like Tarkin, I think, is good because he's that kind of background Imperial who's that leader who's trying to get
yeah,
his ranks up, and he fits within the world and fits within the storyline. And we've seen him
yeah,
before too in the Clone Wars, and
yeah,
he fits right within this kind of storyline. So I'm excited. I'm curious to see what his logic is going to be for why he ends up decommissioning the clones. Because in my mind, like you have an army of near infinite soldiers who you can program to follow whatever order you want to follow. Like,
yeah,
why are you replacing them with random like civilians that you're recruiting? Especially
yeah.
like I just want to get a bit more of that dynamic into why they decided to cut and go to stormtroopers instead of clones.
Yeah, I know he said in the episode it's cheaper, but that doesn't really make sense to me because I imagine you don't exactly have to pay the clones. And I imagine you kind of also would have to pay the conscripted soldiers, unless that dynamic is different than what I thought, where you just sign up to be an Imperial and it's essentially like a room and board situation. But also, who would sign up for that? Be like, hey, there's a high chance you're gonna die, but you get free housing and food just as long as you're a soldier. Seems like a bad trade, but maybe that's how it operates.
It could
Um,
be. It is the Emperor.
but Yeah, so I'm curious. I think part of it's just going to be, oh, they switch out because they kind of have to switch out. But
Hmm.
maybe they'll have a great explanation for it. Like he'll be like, oh, I worked with the clones too much, and they're too independent. They're not going to follow orders. If we have soldiers that sign up and see how great the Empire is, and they sign up because they want to work for the Empire, then maybe they'll listen. And I could see that kind of being his reasoning.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see that, I guess, because normally I wouldn't care that much about these kind of questions. But when you bring it up as like a plot point, it makes me think that you're gonna do something with it.
Yeah,
So I wonder what they're gonna do with it. I also wonder like how much of Camino and the clones and those Camino and aliens are gonna be in this storyline because the Bad Batch by the end of the episode are already rogues on the run. They're not part
yeah,
of the Empire anymore.
yeah.
And how much of this are we gonna get of them like actually within the Empire and the clones POV and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there's an aspect to that I could talk about now, but if you want me to, I can save it more for predictions of where this whole aspect of the story could go.
Yeah, we can save it. We can definitely save it. I
All
want to
right,
talk more about that when we get there
all
too.
right, all right.
But I'm curious. I like the Camino setting. I think it's one
Yeah,
of the cooler
yeah,
locations of the prequels. So it's always fun to get those prequel locations brought back. It's been so long, and I didn't even think about it really until the episode started. But we haven't really been in the prequel era in a really long time, other than the final season of Clone Wars. But in terms of like genuinely new content, it's been a long
yeah,
time.
yeah. And I, I like Camino. It's probably my favorite map in Battlefront, along with Kashyyyk. So
Classic Battlefront map. I want to talk here. We had talked about Omega a little
yeah,
bit. She's this new character that's coming in. She's kind of a mystery at this point in the show, but she's an enhanced clone, we
yeah,
find out, and she wants to be along on the ride here with. She's particularly attached to Hunter. I think she like kind of mirrors him a lot in these scenes. Like he'll be
yeah,
put up his hand and tell him to stop and to be right behind him and give her a little hand like this. And
yeah,
it's kind of cute seeing her mirror him, but I'm very curious what her role in this plot's going to be. I think that's something we'll get to a bit in the
yeah.
predictions, but I want to talk about her now generally. Like, what do you think of her role in this episode?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because one of the aspects I thought was kind of cool was the Kaminoans, I think, talking to Tarkin or somebody, where they said that there were 5 members of the Bad Batch, but I'm like, well, Echo's not really a member. I mean, he's a member of the Bad Batch squadron, but the way the Kaminoan was talking about it is that there were 5 Bad Batch clones, and Echo isn't really a Bad Batch clone. He's a regular clone that had the adaptation put onto him. But I'm like, oh, maybe they just kind of said it that way just to make it easier to understand instead of being like, well, we have 4 Bad Batch clones, and then we have this messed up clone that's augmented, and so now he kind of rolls with them. But then later they were like, oh, Omega is actually the 5th Bad Batch clone, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they are. And I did like that aspect of the plot line in that reveal, and I think for me, I think Omega is clearly like a female clone of Jango Fett, and I've read some speculation online, and this isn't really like a theory because I really don't know where they would go with it, or even if it's just like a backstory for her. But a lot of people think she might be the first attempt at a force sensitive clone.
Interesting. I would like that. I think there's clearly more going on with her than
Yeah,
we know because she's clearly
yeah,
a bit of an empath in some ways.
yeah,
She connects to Crosshair and connects to
yeah,
his kind of like internal struggle. And I think she,
yeah,
some way or another, has like an empathetic ability to
yeah.
be able to connect to clones.
Yeah, she's very empathetic and very like intuitive as well. So I'm not sure are those traits that she has because they want to show that she has very latent force abilities. Maybe she's not like super force sensitive, like she could never be a Jedi, but she does have a touch of like the force, awareness, kind of like the blind guy in Rogue One. I'm blanking on his name, but
Yeah, Donnie Yen's
Chira
character.
Emwe. Yeah, Chira
Yes.
Emwe. Chira Emwe. Like if like that level of force user, or if they just tried to show like she's more of like a female and like empathy and intuitiveness are more female traits. So it could be either or. Like they just tried to show her more female qualities, so they kind of get used that. But yeah, I definitely think she's a Django like female clone. Some people are unsure of what she is, but I thought that was kind of clear, especially with the Kiwi accent.
Yeah, I think she's definitely a Django clone. I wonder if she's one of the ones that's aging
Yeah,
naturally or aging
yeah,
sped up because you don't really see a lot of kid clones for very long. They'll be there, then they'll
mhm,
when they're like Danny Logan kind of age, they'll grow up
yeah.
quick and then become the adults.
Yeah, one of the things I've thought, because her name is Omega, and in the the Greek alphabet, Omega is the last letter. So I thought it would be like, oh, she's the last clone, but then we see like other ones still in the test tube. So I guess
That
that's
is
not.
good.
So I guess that's not accurate. But
She
oh
could be
well.
like the final type of a clone. Like maybe if they really are trying to develop a force sensitive clone, she could be like the Omega clone because she's like, oh, if we can make force sensitive clones, that's like the finale of our project. That's like the last thing we need.
Yeah,
So I could see that. I didn't think much about her being force sensitive, but I like that. I think that's a good explanation for her abilities and her kind of what makes her
yeah,
different than the rest of them. I mentioned at top that the action kind of side of Clone Wars isn't my favorite side of it, but it's because I love the Force side. I love the way it examines the
yeah,
Force and the lore and the kind of it's able to get into more mystical stuff than the live action shows are. So I would love to have them bring the Force into this plot in some way and have her be part of
yeah,
that and explore one little more mystery of the Force. Like, what is a clone with the Force like?
yeah.
What is that? What does that look like to the Force? So I'll be
Because
very curious to see more of that. And now that she's on the team, I hope we can get more of that.
and if anyone's questioning, well, like if you can make one clone force sensitive, aren't they? Wouldn't they all like be force sensitive? And it goes back to I have no idea what episode it is. I could even be the pilot, but Yoda is talking to a group of clones, and they're all trying to express how they're individuals, but they all feel the same, and the world sees or the galaxy sees them as the same. And Yoda basically says that the Force sees them all as separate beings. So I could definitely see you make millions and millions of clones and make sense that one of them eventually would be force sensitive. So
Yeah, I'd love to get more into that as we go along. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm sure we'll talk about it in future episodes if they end up
yeah,
going
yeah.
that route. But I like
I
that,
do
and I
have
think
one apprehensions. It's not quite a negative, but my one apprehension is the whole kind of lone wolf and cub storyline makes me nervous because that's kind of what first two seasons of The Mandalorian is. So I don't know how much it's going to delve into that with Hunter and Omega, but it also kind of is for me. Is Bad Batch going to be more like Clone Wars, where it's like 3 or 4 episode arcs, and by episode 4 we never see Omega again, or is this going to be more like Rebels with a kind of a storyline throughout the season, and then kind of I don't want to say filler, but like sidestep episodes during the season?
yeah, I'm curious about the structure too. I For Omega, I am also curious like how her role is going to be on the team. Is she there long term? Is she going to just be like the kitty, like the Chopper kind of character that's there
Yeah,
to be like the kid relief?
yeah,
But as far as the structure, I'm very curious about that too. I This threw you into the action the same way the Clone Wars does, where they have the narrator come in and he's like, "Oh, this planet
yeah,
and this actor and this," and you're like, "Okay, let's go." And you're just in the middle of the action
yeah,
the same way Clone Wars kind of does. But I would like it if they gave a more Rebels approach and took the story a little bit slower and got us in there and let us build a little bit because I think the build up with the characters and the character interactions is what I liked a lot in this episode. So I don't want it to be that throw you into the action and pick up pieces as you go along kind of storytelling. I would like to be a little more streamlined.
yeah. All right, what's next? I think kind of the fight, but I don't know if there's much to delve into there between the fight and then the fight versus the kind of training session with the droids, except as more just kind of. I mean, it was a great scene. There's just not a lot of story there to delve into. I thought it was just
Yeah,
kind
all
of.
that really happened in that scene is they are getting basically auditioned for Tarkin.
Yeah,
Well, they have that cafeteria fight where they bond with Omega for a second,
yeah,
and that's the only really like plot necessary thing is they
yeah,
bond with Omega and they decide to fight for her, and then next scene, they're tested by Tarkin. They go into that battle sim we've seen it 100 times throughout the Clone Wars, whether it was in Rookies or some
yeah,
of the clone episodes. And cool to see that again, but this time it's the live rounds. The Empire's taking over. They're not playing games or no
yeah,
Republic. Tarkin's going to kill you if you can't beat the simulation. So they have this live round simulation, and of course, because of the heroes and they're the best, they
yeah,
win and they impress Tarkin, and they're chosen to go on this mission to take down some separatists living in the jungle.
yeah,
So that's essentially the middle act of the whole
yeah.
show is they're questioning their self, and then they're told that they're the powerful group and they're sent out to take on these separatists.
Yeah. I do want to jump back really quick and just say one thing. Uh, I love when like politics are just slightly dropped into Star Wars every now and then. I don't like the Phantom Menace where they have like 10 roundtable scenes and it's just a lot of boring talks about trade federations. But I do like the scene where Tarkin is talking to the Kaminoan and the Kaminoan is like, but the Republic told us, we have a contract with the Republic that's basically like you're going to pay for clones indefinitely. And Tarkin's like, well, Republic doesn't exist anymore with the Empire, so that contract's gone. And I don't know. I just love that moment of just because it felt very real. It felt very real, like very real world.
Yeah, I felt like it was some government overstep, and it was like, well, technicality, you didn't sign with us, so we're good.
Yeah.
Felt like something that would happen.
Technically, we're all the same people that you signed with, but we changed our name from Republic to Empire, so contract doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I do like jumping back to what we were talking about. I do like the Saw Gerrera drop in.
Yeah, I like that. I wasn't quite sure who to see showing up. I had a prediction of who it would be, and then it wasn't them, and
Who
it
did
was
you who,
Sagarera.
who did you think it would be?
I thought for sure it was gonna be like, I don't know, a surviving Jedi or something like that, like just
Okay,
someone who was out on the run. I was like, oh, it's gonna be Caleb. Like I thought for maybe Kanan is back out
okay,
there again, anything like
okay.
that. But I was happy to see Saw. I think Saw
Yeah,
ties so much stuff
yeah,
together. I love that he's this continuous character that showed up in so many different things, and
yeah, yeah.
especially if it has these small roles too. It's not like someone that has to require the plot to be okay. Let's go figure out where Saw Gerrera is at right now. But it's like okay, well we're running into a rebel group. Why not have it be Saw's group? You know?
Yeah, especially because, like, I feel like Saw is the type of person that would have been the leader of the rebellion if he wasn't as crazy. Like, if he was at an 11 all of the time, if he dialed it back to like an 8, he would have been like the Mon Mothma if he didn't get blown up by the Death Star. But
Yeah, I'm really curious how much of this Rebel origin story is going to play into it too. We'll talk about some stuff in the predictions that I have for that, but I do really want to see this early era of the Rebels coming together, similar to how we did in Star Wars Rebels. But this is even earlier. I think we'll start to see like how does Mon Mothma and those kind of characters start to come together and get
yeah,
involved. Because
yeah,
what I loved about the ending of Rebels in the last like season or two is that in particular, like seeing these big groups that are separate fights sort of slowly come together. You have Saw Gerrera and Mon Mothma, and you have Hera and Kane's team all having their own little adventures, and then they come together by the end. And I would like to see these little factions start to pop up in the show. That
yeah,
would be kind of a good way to do it. Like
yeah.
you have Saw's group right here. Maybe in a few episodes, you see Mon Mothma's group somewhere else. Maybe you see,
Chan Dodana's group.
yeah, you can see anybody's group show up, and then there's all these different groups coming around. I think
Yeah,
that's what I would do with this show.
yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, so we got through that Saw scene where essentially they're given this ultimatum of like, okay, you can fight for the Empire or you can fight for us. And then I was surprised how early on they got out of the Empire's clutch. I thought like, oh, maybe the whole first season, or at least like the first half of the first season, they'll be working for the Empire and they'll have that like moral
Mhm.
complexity of them being on like Empire business.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think that just because I saw an interview with someone that worked behind the scenes that says at some point this season they become mercenaries. So I kind of knew that was kind of the direction they were going. So I figured, especially with a 70-minute premiere, like by the end of this premiere, they'll be outside of the Empire.
I'm excited though. I think it'll give them a lot to do. It's very open-ended ending. They have a direction, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, they didn't give us a ton to go on in terms of like what's next for these characters. So I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah,
All right, I have a quote here that I liked from Saw where he said, "The Clone War may have ended, but a civil war is about to begin." And I
yeah,
think that kind of sums up the tension of this whole series right here.
yeah. I really like that. Of basically, because it kind of feels like in a way that the entire, however you feel about any of the trilogies, it kind of feels like one giant war where the Civil War or you know, the the initial war, whatever that was called, basically turned into the Galactic Civil War, and then the Galactic Civil War kind of just had remnants throughout it for the next 30 years of people trying to rise back up again. Like the South will rise again, but the Empire will rise again, basically.
Yep, I really like this era of the
Yeah,
rebellion. I think, especially in the original trilogy, you see the rebels as like the good guys and the Empire as the bad guys, and
yeah,
these shows have led us to get a little more complex. It's certainly the Empire are the bad guys in the show. There's no questioning that. But when you get into Saw Gerrera and characters like that, you start saying like, oh look, the other
Yeah.
side can sometimes be a
Yeah.
little militaristic, a little brutal themselves. So I think
Yeah.
that'll be interesting. I hope we see more of Saw once in a while. I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
be a regular character, but like a couple episodes here and there would
Yeah.
be good.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. Be like, hey, this is your reintroduction to Saw, and then if this is an arc, like him being in like episodes like 10 through 12 or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, getting towards the end here, we have that scene with Saw and the clones head back to Kamino, and of course they're caught. They've been spied upon by some
Yeah.
probe droids, and now Tarkin knows that they've gone rogue and decides to capture them. And
Yeah.
now they're in the brink of Kamino with
Yeah.
Omega, of
Yeah.
course. She's
Yeah.
also been causing problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that whole breakout scene of them working with like Wrecker. People online are talking shit about Wrecker, but Wrecker's I think my favorite. Like he's there to be the comedic relief, you know. He's
Yeah, I
basically
thought.
Drax. Like if they're the Guardians of the Galaxy, he's Drax.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. I thought he was funny, especially in this scene in
Yeah.
particular. I thought it was definitely his funniest
Yeah.
scene when he bangs on a wall and just like sits down casually like nothing's going on, and the
Yeah.
clones are like looking
Yeah.
around. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
No one saw that. No one is noticing what's
Yeah.
going on. But that was funny.
Yeah. Same. I really like that scene. And then with Omega having to crawl out and bust out, and then obviously she falls and lands on the clones.
Yeah, I like it too because it uses like three or four different characters like unique abilities to their advantage. Like no, not one character is like the sole
Yeah.
planner of this. Like you had the smart guy, I can't remember his name, like the doctor type guy. He's like,
Tech.
oh, there's like a weaker part right here in the wall if you push it, and then of course you had the brute, the strong man who's gonna be able to punch it and open it, and then you have the little kid who's able to crawl in the hole, and even have Hunter who's able to like keep everybody in control and give them the rules and make sure no one's giving the plan away. So you really see the group works a dynamic within this unique situation. So I thought it was one of the better scenes of the episode was them breaking out of this, and I thought it was funny, it was heartfelt, it connected the characters, it showed me them using the roles really well. So I like that scene a lot.
Yeah, me too. I really enjoyed it.
And we've got this big final battle now. Crosshair was taken out of the prison cell a bit to go talk to Tarkin, and then by the end of the episode, he's turned. He's
Yeah.
his ship's been reactivated. I guess I explained it as
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
he's some kind of surgery or something has reactivated his chip, and now he's gone full Order 66. He's going to try and kill the clones he once worked alongside with because good clones follow orders, or good soldiers follow orders, isn't it? What the
Yeah.
line is?
Good soldiers follow orders. Yeah. Which is kind of a
Is it?
repeat of what Rex says in the final kind of arc of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, that was a cool
Yeah.
throwback. Right.
Yeah, there was another. I don't remember when in the episode it was, but they were talking, I believe, about Echo, where they said, "Oh, you're more machine now than man." Well,
Mm-hmm.
partially or whatever he says, or he's like, "Oh, by percentage, I guess."
Yeah, I like when Clone Wars brings in lines like that. It's funny, and
Yeah.
and they're not like super on the nose. It's not like they're looking in the camera and saying like, "You're more machine than man," just like Darth Vader. And there's
Yeah.
like they're making a slight little reference to the line without
Yeah.
making it super super ridiculous. Because this is still a kid show. Like kids are
Yeah.
gonna want to watch this, so you want those kind of fun moments,
Yeah.
like this breakout scene and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, where
Yeah.
kids can have fun watching this too. Well, we've got the finale here. Crosshair and the clones, they get in this big kind of Western style shootout right at the end when they're powering up the ship to leave, and Hunter has this stand down with Crosshair where they're going to draw on each other, and Crosshair draws, Hunter jumps out of the way. They have this cool, foggy shootout where Crosshair survives, but the clones do get away.
Yeah.
So
Omega's the one that takes him out.
yeah, good move for Omega. I was not sure because they did the typical thing where it's like, oh, they fight these clones and then they just have to linger in the room for a second just so you can see the bodies moving. So you're like, okay, they didn't kill them. They're still okay.
Yeah.
You can't have the main characters kill anybody. But then, like, I wonder where they're going to go with that because you have a little kid and how much
Uh,
of this kid is actually going to be doing, like, dark
uh,
things and killing people. Like,
yeah.
that's what I was impressed by with Rebels in some elements is that they weren't afraid to have Ezra do stuff that a kid wouldn't necessarily want to do.
Yeah. Ezra launched AT-ATs off cliffs.
And I do wonder how dark they're going to go with this kind of self-insert kid character in a Disney show.
Yeah.
But promising that she takes him down in the first episode here. And
Yeah, it was kind of interesting too, where she asked like, "Oh, where did?" or Hunter asked where she learned it, and she didn't really have an answer. She's just like, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, I wonder where she learned that. I wonder if she is force sensitive and it was some kind of like force instinct to be able to use the blaster really well or something like that,
Yeah,
or if she just has this programming that's going to kick in
yeah,
similarly to the rest of the clones. If she had this manipulated DNA in some way that's going to make her like a really strong shooter or something like that. I'm curious to
yeah,
see what her future role is in the team.
yeah, for sure. Same.
And that's pretty much it. We have our final scene where they set a destination and they say they're going to fly out and meet someone because they know a guy. And then we head off
Yeah.
into the series of Bad Batch.
All right, and we can kind of kick off our prediction of who that guy's going to be, and I think that's a pretty, you know, for lack of a for not to be on the nose, but I think it's a pretty cut and dry prediction of who that character is going to be. Uh, we talked about it beforehand, and you weren't sure, and I said, "Well, you asked," and I said, "I'm pretty sure I know," and you asked me how I know, and I said I did my research, and then you said you're going to do your research. So I want to ask, did you do your research? Who's the guy?
You know, I did not do my research into my sleeping instead, but
Uh,
I have a couple predictions based off of next to nothing, and I want to because you did the research, so you'll know who it is. But I had my
you should go
initial
first. I want to
reaction,
hear you go first.
my initial guess as watching the scene was that he's gonna go back and find that towards the middle of the Clone Wars, there was that one clone who was like a outcast who ran away or something. I can't remember the situation around it, but he was like an outcasted clone who
All
ran
right.
away, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna go and find that guy. It was my prediction. He's gonna find that one clone that ran away.
Is that your only prediction, or you got more?
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Oh,
You
okay.
know the answer, Joe. Give me
Well,
the
I know the
answer.
act. So they say they're going to J19, right? Is
I was
the
like, I'm gonna Google J19, and I just never got around to googling it.
so on last time we heard J19 was in an episode of the Clone Wars, and it was to meet a clone who ran away. And his name was Cut. So, like I said, it's a pretty cut and dry prediction. And also, next week or not next week, Friday's episode is called Cut and Run. So.
So look at that. I don't even need to do the research, Joe. I'm just a Star Wars genius.
Yeah, so the guy that they're going to meet next episode is a clone who defected. And there's also rumors that Rex may be there too, but Cut is definitely going to be one of them. Now, it could be they're going to meet Rex, and then Cut also happens to be there, but Cut will definitely be in Friday's episode.
I love it. I'm really excited for Friday's episode. I think this
Yeah,
is a very promising premiere, more than I thought
yeah,
it was going to be. So
yeah,
I'm just
same.
very excited to see what's next. Like you talked about the structure. We got to figure out the structure of the storytelling. We got to figure out like, are there arcs? I'm sure there's
Yeah,
arcs, but like, are they going to be randomly spread throughout like time? Are they going to be in
yeah,
chronological order? We don't know anything about this really. So I'm
yeah.
very excited. With Star Wars, you have no idea what we're going to get. Like you'd walk into the
Yeah.
show and it could be anything.
Yeah, and we won't really even know until like episode like 6 or 7. I think kind of what this because like next week's episode will be a continuation, but is it a continuation because it's the second episode in a four episode arc, or is it just the second episode of like a 16 episode series?
Yeah, that was one of the questions I definitely had written down was just the structure and what that's going to be like. Because I think that'll be telling about what the story is going to be like too. Are we going to be just scattered across the galaxy? Because if they're mercenaries, that leans really well to that kind of a structure where they're just like,
Uh,
oh, the Bad Batch arrives at Camino, and the Bad Batch arrives at whatever planet they want to come up with, and then here's your adventure from this week. So
yeah,
I'm curious if that'll be the structure.
yeah. All right. Do you have any other predictions? Because I have two main ones.
I think the one we teased towards the beginning, you brought your Funko Pop, you brought out everything else. I think look, Maul is like the all-star of this animated universe. I think
Yeah.
he's the embodiment of what you can do with a character here. You can take a side character who was cool looking in the Phantom Menace, but was never anything like really in depth or complex or had any character at all, and you can turn them into one of the more compelling characters of the entire Star Wars franchise. And I would love to see Maul come back. I think we could see the Crimson Dawn. That's my prediction. I wrote down. I said we're going to see the Crimson Dawn because they set that up in Solo and never had a chance to do anything with it, and I would like to see them get a chance to do that again. We might even see Kara or whatever her name is again.
Yeah. Oh, Kira.
I would like to see the Crimson Dawn show up. I'd like to see Maul show up and give that connective tissue to Solo. I also think we could see that rebel group from Solo show up. The one where now the Flag Smasher,
Oh,
Carly. I can't remember her.
the Cloud Riders.
Yep. I think my prediction is generally that we're going to see a lot of these factions show up at different episodes and different times. But they're not going to really come together because that's kind of the plot of Rebels in my mind. But I think we will see these individual factions growing up along around the galaxy, whether it's Crimson Dawn, whether it's the Cloud Riders, whatever you called them from
Yeah.
Solo. I think we'll see those kind of groups coming up, and I'm really excited for it. I know you're a Crimson Dawn fan. I know
I have
you're a
a
Maul fan.
Crimson Dawn tattoo right here.
Yep. I thought of you as soon as I got to the end of the episode. I can't. I really
Yeah.
think Crimson Dawn will show up, and I hope that satisfies your tattoo because you have a tattoo for. I don't know if you know this, Joe, but you have a tattoo for a group that was only mentioned by name in one movie.
Yeah, but I mean, it was more to represent Maul. I almost got the Death Watch tattoo, and then Solo came out, and I didn't really like the Death Watch design so that much. But I'm like, yeah, it represents Maul, but I like the Crimson Dawn symbol a lot better. But I 100% fully believe Darth Maul is going to be in this series, and I have
Mhm.
evidence. So in the Clone Wars, in the opening, 99% of the time when it said like Star Wars The Clone Wars to open every episode and the logo was yellow. The only time the logo was red was the Darth Maul episodes. When the Bad Batch started for this episode before the logo burned away and it said the Bad Batch, it was a red logo. So like that started and I thought, holy shit, like this episode is gonna have Darth Maul in it. Maul was not in this episode. I fully believe, along with, so they did the models for like Quinlan Voss and all of the other like top heads of um, Crimson Dawn in the final arc of the Clone Wars. Of like, there's a conference call with them and Maul that you see, and they're in there for like 10 seconds. So they have the models made already. We also saw at some point in the final season of the Clone Wars, they did a model of Deepa Balaba and Caleb Doom, who appeared in this episode. And so my theory is Crimson Dawn and Darth Maul are going to be the big bad of season one of the Bad Batch.
I love that a lot.
They become mercenaries, and so that's why the logo is red. Is not because Darth Maul's in this episode, but he's like the main like antagonist of this series. And I think when they become mercenaries, it's like they are going to become mercenaries of Crimson Dawn, or maybe going against Crimson Dawn. But I think Crimson Dawn and Darth Maul are going to be play a very big role in the Bad Batch.
I love that. I think that's a great arc. I think especially because in Clone Wars and Rebels you don't get to Maul until like halfway through both of those shows really.
Yeah,
So it'd be cool to get to Maul early on. And you mentioned we don't know how long this is going to be. Like, is it a one season thing? Is it an ongoing kind of
yeah,
story? I have a feeling they're going to go for the ongoing kind of thing.
yeah. That's
I
kind
think
of the
Disney Plus needs
yeah.
that kind of a show.
And I think this could easily go. I don't think this is like a 7 or 8 episode thing like the Clone Wars was, but I definitely think it could be like 4 seasons like Rebels was.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm hoping for.
So,
Just like a tight 4 or 5 seasons.
I do have another prediction as well.
Yeah, give me your prediction. I want to hear. You got the receipts on that Crimson Dawn prediction, so I want to hear what you got
So
next.
this one doesn't have nearly the level of receipts, but we saw like a touch of the Kaminoans like lying to the Empire. I can't remember what it was fully about, but it was towards the end where they're like, maybe we hide that aspect from them.
Hmm.
I think partially this could be of why, to lead to your question, because I wanted to save it and answer it, that I talked about saving, was partially why the clones got wiped out, is I could potentially see a clone and Kaminoan insurgency against the Empire. Of the Kaminoans override the chips, override the Empire's orders of Order 66 to kind of do their own thing, and lead against the Empire, and the Empire just completely wipes them out.
Yeah, I that'd be interesting. I do think there's more to come with Camino. Like you mentioned it before that we weren't sure what the future of Camino was in the story, but they did get that scene towards the end where it was Crosshair letting the Bad Batch get away. They were like, let's just not tell the Emperor about that one.
Yeah.
They're like, let's just keep that to ourselves. And I think that's the beginning of seeing not just Camino, but I think a lot of planets are going to be getting too smart for their britches and trying to talk back to the Emperor and rise up against him. And I think we'll see a lot of that get shut down really quickly and easily. I think this is a chance for them to establish the Empire as this really oppressive force. And I think you see Camino a planet that we've seen as a powerful role within the plot of the prequels, someone that has a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of influence in
Yeah,
the galaxy that could just be wiped out by the Empire in like a single arc. If they
yeah,
have an invasion of Camino arc and then the Bad Batch shows up to try and defend their home planet and then it just gets destroyed or
yeah.
something like that, that could be really powerful.
Yeah, and one of the things that's kind of helped me with my predictions and like various shows throughout the years is uh, watching the reality show Survivor. Jeff Probst said in an interview one time that basically every episode tells two stories. It tells the story of why the person that got voted off, and why the person that eventually won the game. And so now whenever like shows like whatever show it is that's like a fictional narrative show, anytime I notice a line that's like, okay, this doesn't really help tell the story of this episode, or a scene or moment that doesn't really tell the story of this episode, I'm like, oh, okay, because it's helping tell the story of like the season or series as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And that line with the Kaminoans of like, let's not tell the Empire about this one, didn't feel like it was helping tell the story of this episode. So I'm like, okay, because it's telling the story of this season. So I think that's partially why I feel that the Kaminoans versus the Empire are either going to be a series long thing or a season long thing.
It could be powerful if we see that battle with Kamino versus the Empire, and that's the first time in the series we see Darth Vader show up, and he just slaughters a bunch of clones. That could be brutal.
Oh,
Anakin
that
going
that
in,
that could be
just
great.
killing clone after clone after clone.
That sounds like a great like season finale right there.
Mm-hmm. Give him
Uh,
another hallway scene.
One thing I wanted for you or to get your thoughts on, because I could go either way. Do you think um, I guess it's multiple questions within a question. If this is an arc thing, do you think like Crosshair's like gonna be kind of one of the bigger villains of the series, or do you think maybe in like 4 episodes they like kidnap him and remove his chip, and like by episode 5 he's back to normal and back on the team, or do you think it's like he's
Hmm.
never back on the team again and they're eventually just gonna have to kill him? Because they definitely have made you aware that this is not like Crosshair on his own being like, nah, we're doing the wrong thing. It's definitely like he has the chip and he's essentially being mind controlled. Like it's a Winter Soldier type situation.
What I hope and think will happen is that Crosshair is going to have this moral complexity that we've seen in this episode. We know that it's not entirely his doing, that he's still the victim of this ship. But ultimately, I do think he's going to have to go down at the hands of one of the Bad Batch clones. And I think by the end of the first season, he'll probably be down, I would imagine. Or if they do like a mid season type thing, I think by the time they get to like the big first finale, like whether it's a mid season finale or the season finale, whatever our first big finale moment is, I think it's going to be Crosshair's death. I think that could be really tragic. The
Yeah.
guy who's worked alongside with them, and then they ultimately have to take him down. And as they're doing it, that it's not entirely his fault or his actions, but they don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think that could be powerful.
Well, the episode dates did get released or leaked, and I don't think there's ever a break. I think it's straight on continuous from now until the end of the series. So, but I could also see a situation where like if we have a Vader moment and Vader appears and he starts slaughtering clones and he starts going after the Bad Batch, where Crosshair has like a consciousness where he basically like sacrifices himself against Vader so the other ones can get away.
That's another good thing. I think that's a good prediction. I do agree with you though. I don't think Crosshair makes it out of the season. That's my guess. I think either
Yeah,
he's taken down by the clones or he's taken down by Vader or he sacrifices himself in some way. I just don't see him.
yeah,
He has that kind of villain arc set up where you come in tragically to the villain role and then by the end of the first season you're gone.
yeah.
Making room for Crimson Dawn. You gotta Darth Maul's gotta come in and step up.
And I do think I have a minor prediction that I think Tarkin is kind of like a 1 episode thing, because there was a hot toy released for an Admiral Rampart, who's going to be part of in the Bad Batch series, and I feel like if you're making a hot toy of a character, it's got to be a fairly prominent character. So I think Tarkin's kind of going to dip out to be like, hey, we had our recognizable face, and then Admiral Rampart is going to step in and kind of fill in that role that Tarkin's been in.
Yeah, I like that. These shows do a good job typically of creating new villain characters like
Yeah,
that. I can't remember the guy's name now, but He was in Rebels. He had the
Agent
sideburns and
Callus.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a really good
I
character.
loved Agent Callus. He's the best.
He was one of the better characters in Rebels. I think that I'm
Yeah.
excited to see more original characters. As much as I love seeing stuff like Tarkin show up and the Camino planet show up, I mentioned earlier like I'm not a huge into the super connective stuff to Star Wars. I think when it's there, if it's done well, I'm really into it. But I think it's risky when to do it too much, and I'm more excited to see them create new characters, or at least take small characters like Saw Gerrera and make them more interesting
Yeah.
rather than just we've seen enough Tarkin. We already like Tarkin. You don't need to make me like Tarkin more.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
give, give me some character that I don't like or some character that's unknown and enhance them and give me something more to care about than just oh they're in Star Wars. Give me
Yeah.
more to the characters.
Yeah. For sure.
I have
You,
one last question for you if you don't have anything else.
okay. Yeah. I don't have anything. I was just gonna ask if you had any final predictions, but
My last question is what do you see as the endpoint for the show? Like how what in terms of Star Wars like structure, in terms of what we know of the lore, like how far along are they gonna go on this show in era wise? Are we gonna run right into Rebels? Are we gonna connect those shows? Are we gonna run into stuff like what how long does this show go on for plot wise?
I don't think plot wise it goes super long because I think, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I think the backdrop of the show is the rise of the Empire itself. So I think it's gonna. I think the show's gonna run 4 to 5 years, and like Rebels, I think it's gonna run in real time. Where I think we're just gonna see the first like 4 to 5 years of the Empire. I don't think it's gonna run into anything specific. But also because we don't really see like we don't I mean we haven't heard about Clone Force 99 and like basically any other media. It's not like oh like they're this mythical crew. I kind of think they have to die at the end.
Brutal.
Or so I'm curious like in what way they die, or maybe they're just like hey we're just gonna go off, we've did our part in the war, we're just gonna go off and kind of live our own lives. But I think partially like in Rebels, they're gonna sacrifice themselves or like do something in the series finale that's gonna play a bigger part in the story, the larger story of Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that's a good prediction. I'll take your bet for it. I do think that ultimately they're gonna have to sacrifice themselves. I think maybe one or two of them could end up surviving and just kind of living their lives
Yeah,
separately. But I think a lot of them are gonna have to go down. I do wonder, like, the Star Wars loves to be poetic and rhyme and connect and stuff like that. So I do think maybe by the finale we'll get a couple like connective tissue scenes that bring us right into Rebels, the same way that Clone Wars kind of ended and had like that epilogue scene that connected us to the future of Star
yeah,
Wars. And I would like to see, we had our pilot first scene of the first episode was with Kanan. So it'd be nice if maybe the finale we see like a young adult Kanan now, and he's or maybe we'll see Kanan as he's just about to kind of join this story of Rebels that he's in, because I
yeah,
would like to see kind of more a little bit. That's what I like about Star Wars Connected Issue is not necessarily characters showing up here and there, but like the way that the
yeah,
themes connect to each other
yeah,
poetically. And I would love to see just by the end of the show some ties to what we see in the future.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm very curious to see how it ties in to end with. Maybe they're the reason. Well, I guess it wouldn't be the show unless it goes longer than I think and there's more time jumps, but maybe like Clone Force 99 is the reason that Crimson Dawn falls or something like that.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, especially if we're gonna bring Crimson Dawn. We're gonna bring in characters. I'm just very happy to get more animated Star Wars. It's been so long since you've gotten Rebels, and this is Clone Wars final season was really cool, and it was fun to get like the ending and the results
Yeah,
to that, but it didn't quite feel like
yeah,
new Star Wars as much. And this
yeah,
feels very new. It feels like we're getting new Star Wars stories. They're getting them in the animated universe, which is my kind of favorite way of watching Star Wars, and I'm really excited for it. I never got a chance to watch Clone Wars week to week because it was all kind of done by the time I was getting into it.
yeah.
I
Same.
watched most of Rebels week to week, so that was a fun experience. But I did fall off a little bit towards the end, like the middle bit, and came back for the final season. So I'm hopeful that this show keeps me interested enough to watch week to week to week because I'll, for the first time, get a Star Wars experience like that to watch the show every week, every time. Well, of course,
Yeah,
Mandalorian, but this
yeah,
is like an animated Star Wars
yeah,
show week to week would be fun.
Yeah, yeah. I watched Resistance, but it was like not great. It was very much for like a young audience, where I feel like Clone Wars and Bad Batch and even Rebels kind of towed the line of like it's for kids, but it's also made in mind that adults are going to watch it as well. So
Hmm.
I guess I want one final prediction, and it's not really a prediction; it's more of a wish. If you could have any, I know we talked about Darth Maul, and I'm going to exclude Darth Maul even for myself. If you could have any character appear in the Bad Batch, who would you want to see?
What I would like to do is connect it in some way to these Clone Wars characters, like some small obscure Clone Wars characters showing up are always fun. I really liked in Rebels when they went to back to Geonosis and they had that sort of return to Geonosis
Oh yeah,
arc. Let me think. I do. There's a lot of really interesting, like
well,
small scale Clone
yeah.
Wars characters that would be fun. Yeah,
Well,
if you have an
well,
answer,
yeah, I have my answer locked and loaded, and it's my second favorite Star Wars character of all time. It's a character that's appeared in the sequel era, and the original trilogy era, and then obviously the prequel era because he debuted in the Clone Wars, and that's Hondo Onaka. I want them, if they're going to
of
be
course.
mercenaries, doing a job with Hondo. I think their kind of serious attitude alongside Hondo would be great. I think Wrecker and Hondo would get along amazingly.
Hondo was a great pick. I think he would be a really good addition to it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a different poll, and not necessarily like character, but I would love to see Batu, the planet for that
Oh,
is
that'd be
Galaxy's
really cool.
Edge. They
Yep.
haven't brought that into live action or anything like that yet, any form of Star Wars action. But I would love to see that come to life in the in this animated show. I think that would be fun, especially because it's a much different era than because we don't know Galaxy's Edge in canon is technically within like between Force Awakens and Last Jedi, something like that, somewhere in the sequel era, like
Yep.
in perpetuity. So whenever you go there, like Kylo Ren's walking around, Rey's walking around, the technology matches the sequel era technology. So if we see it now, it'll be much different. You won't have the Resistance X wings. You'll be having like more modern, well, contemporary to the show tech and stuff like that. So I'd love to see Batu.
Yep.
I
All right.
spent countless hours at Batu, so I would love to get a chance to go back to that now that we're still in COVID times and I haven't been there in 2 years.
You'll be like, Hunter touched this rock, and now I'm touching this rock.
Yeah, I'll be like, I was there. I touched that rock. I went to that store and I spent $300 on
Yeah.
stuffed animals.
Yeah, I'm curious, especially with. I enjoyed the sequel era. Obviously, I wouldn't say I'm a episode 9 defender, but of the four of us on the main movie Changeup podcast, I'm the only one that seems to enjoy it. But I'm curious if, especially if like the Bad Batch goes to back to, if they're going to kind of change up the eras, because I feel like that's kind of a cool way to change up the park every few years, is to be like, oh, it was the sequel era, but now it's Batu during the prequel era, now it's Batu during the original trilogy era. So I think it'd be kind of cool if the Bad Batch goes there, and then like a year or two from now, it's like the original trilogy era or something, or it's like that middle era, and then you could have Vader walking around, you could have the Bad Batch walking around, you know.
Yeah, I think especially since the sequels weren't necessarily beloved by a
Yeah,
lot of people,
yeah,
Disney might want to get a chance to get outside of that and revitalize Galaxy's Edge a bit and then
yeah.
maybe build some more interest around it.
All right, yeah. Any final thoughts on the episode?
No, I liked it a lot. I liked it more than I thought that I would, and I'm very curious what it's going to be like going forward. I'm excited that we're reviewing them. I think it'll enhance a lot. Just talking to you now has made me appreciate a lot of the episode a lot more. So I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to it for the rest of the episodes, and I can't wait. Friday, only like a couple days away from now, but
yeah.
it'll be fun. Are they going to be half an hour episodes, or are they going to be
I
44 or something
no, I
like
think
that?
they're going to be like 30 minutes, but an actual 30 minutes, not 22 minutes. So,
All right.
but I think it's
What about
definitely.
you? Any final thoughts going in now?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely interested. You know, I'm curious to see what next episode's going to be. I kind of like the Rebels model of like it's mostly going to be new characters, but like every 5 or 6 episode, it'll be like, oh, here's Lando, or oh, here's Leia. Like I
Mm-hmm.
understand next episode's going to have cut in it. I mean, 99% chance next episode has cut in it, but he's a very, very minor character. But I kind of hope the show isn't every week, let's visit a famous Star Wars or
Mm-hmm.
like a known Star Wars character. But I feel like Rebels kind of did that a lot too, where it's like, hey, season premiere has like a bunch of, you know, known characters in it, and then we go most of a season, and then, you know, mid-season finale, it's like, oh, here's a bunch of known characters, and then mid-season premiere. Here's a bunch of known characters, and then you go the rest of the season until the season finale with just nobody. So I feel like that's what it's gonna be. We're gonna go 3 or 4 episodes, and then like Darth Maul will show up, or Hondo will show up, or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll meet Ezra's parents. You never know.
You never know. We could meet Poe's parents. There's some alternate to the
Oh yeah,
Force that
that'd
never
be
really
really
gotten
cool.
explored in any way.
That'd be really cool. I'd be down to see Poe's parents, the Damerons.
Yes, they had a little magic tree or something, didn't they, at one point?
Oh wait, no, they'd be
That was
like little
incredible.
kid. They'd be like babies right now. So
You're
probably not.
right.
Probably not Poe's parents, but maybe Poe's
Poe's
grandpa.
grandparents,
Yeah,
you
Poe's grandpa.
know?
Grandpa Dameron. All right. All right. Yeah, this is fun. We'll be back Friday, hopefully a little bit earlier in the day than
Well,
it,
we'll hope so.
9 o'clock. But yeah, see you Friday.